It has won 2 awards since it started airing on radio in 2014. Beginning today, the Joy Business Van, the weekly feature on SMEs and startups in Ghana, will be on TV and online. With the support of the internet service provider Busy, the Joy Business Fund will be connecting you to startups and SMEs to a dynamic network of ideas, information, people, and decision makers. This will be done on all of our platforms. We're talking radio, TV, and online. In a moment, we'll be hearing more about the Joy Business Van, and we'll be looking at the broader topic of empowering small and medium-scale enterprises, which have bolstered the economies of many developed countries. But first, let's take a look at this.
There are many people who want to start their own businesses. They've got wonderful ideas, but draw a blank when it comes to deciding what business they want to start, how to acquire capital, and get access to ready markets.
I found out that I wasn't the bank type. That's one. And then a friend of mine, who is not a very close friend, was like, oh, you can do all of this. Then let's try something. Let's do something. Let's start something. I was like, okay, so gradually, and I'm up with it again.
The Joy Business Van gives the small businesses the exposure they need by telling their stories and inspiring others to start something too.
Okay.
But what really interests me is why a graduate decides to enter into this. Like you mentioned, you're in the corporate world. I'm sure you're being paid at the end of every month, but you decide to abandon all of that to do this.
I'd always wanted to do something on my own as a little girl because I saw my parents doing something on their own, yes, and to give other people opportunity to also work or create job avenue for other people.
The Joy Business Fund does so by connecting you to that young lady who is manufacturing and bottling local drinks, the young pharmacy assistant who follows his passion for shoes, and the IT professional who wants to make it big like Steve Jobs.
When we're dealing with clients, or when we're dealing with prospective clients, they ask, so what's the name of your company? And then we say D for developer. People normally didn't get it straight, and it sounded a bit laughable. But then there was a reason behind that name. So we thought, okay, why not rebrand to developer technology?
We don't just live with them, we engage the experts too.
You must always have your market in mind. TM Lewin wants to sell to people like you and I. Dolce & Gabbana wants to sell to designers, and they're ultra rich. It depends on who your market is.
Keeping startups posted on government policies and giving them the opportunity to engage in discussions on issues that affect them, all in the quest of empowering small businesses and making them globally competitive. The Joy Business Van is here to stay.
I'm sure you want to see more. Now, joining me in the studio is the host of Joy Business Fund, Daryl Kwao. Good morning, Daryl.
Good morning, Mama V. How are you doing?
I'm well. Yourself?
I'm doing great.
Cool.
Quite great.
We also have Asabia Jerry Agbenu, who is managing partner of startup consultancy firm Wendro. Great to have you.
Good to be here.
So, Daryl, for the sake of those who perhaps do not know a lot about the Joy Business Fund, even though it's been running on radio, tell us about it.
Well, you just saw that for 2 years we've been running the Joy Business Fund on radio. The idea came up in 2014 when we decided that we wanted to focus a lot on small businesses because in other countries, other developed countries, small businesses run their economy. And we wanted to also bring a refreshing twist to reporting on issues bothering entrepreneurship, SME startups, and we decided that we want to go on the ground, get to those people, interact with them, highlight their stories, connect them with decision makers, policy makers, startup coaches who can help them so they can build their businesses and so they can grow.
I remember, I think one that would always be on my mind is Watching on Wheels.
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorite too. Great experiences. The other one, unfortunately, has to do with food. Was Chop Trucks, the food joint one on a Chevrolet, a big truck. A young lady who started that business. She actually dropped out of school and she wanted to do that. I also remember being in a fitting shop, auto fitting shop the whole day.
I remember that.
That was an interesting one too. So we've been telling stories, diverse stories, people doing so many things, IT, health, agric. There's so many people out there who are doing...
Do you charge for featuring people who are starting their own small business?
We don't. We are telling stories. That's our passion. We don't want to demand money from anybody. And I mean, these small businesses are struggling already. They need exposure. So we felt this is a great way to give them the exposure they need.
So that brings me to, why are you focusing on small businesses?
You know, like I said, in various developed economies, SMEs run their businesses. For instance, in the UK, I understand that about 50% of the businesses there are SMEs, and they run the economy actually. So they are providing the jobs that we are calling for so much here in Ghana. So they've got potential to turn our economy around. And if we just look at this infographic, it will tell us a bit more about SMEs and what they're doing around the world.
Does not only have the facts, but knows what to make of them. Joy Business Knowledge, empowering.
Small and medium enterprises, SMEs, play a major role in most economies, particularly in developing countries. Formal SMEs contribute up to 45% of total employment and up to 33% of national income, GDP, in emerging economies. These numbers are significantly higher when informal SMEs are included. According to estimates, 600 million jobs will be needed in the next 15 years to absorb the growing global workforce, mainly in Asia and sub-Saharan Africa. In emerging markets, most formal jobs are with SMEs, which also create 4 out of 5 new positions. However, access to finance is a key constraint to SME growth. Without it, many SMEs languish and stagnate. SMEs are less likely to be able to secure bank loans than large firms. Instead, they rely on internal or personal funds to launch and initially run their enterprises. 50% of formal SMEs don't have access to formal credit. The financing gap is even larger when micro and informal enterprises are taken into account. Overall, approximately 70% of all MSMEs in emerging markets lack access to credit. While the gap varies considerably between regions, it's particularly wide in Africa and Asia. The current credit gap for formal SMEs is estimated to be 1.2 trillion US dollars. The total credit gap for both formal and informal SMEs is as high as 2.6 trillion US dollars. A World Bank Group study suggests there are between 365 to 445 million micro, small and medium enterprises, MSMEs, in emerging markets. 25 to 30 million are formal SMEs and 55 to 70 million are formal micro enterprises, and 285 to 345 million are informal enterprises. Moving informal SMEs into a formal sector can have considerable advantages for the SME. For example, better access to credit and government services and to the overall economy. For example, higher tax revenues, better regulations. Also, providing SMEs access to finance and finding solutions to unlock sources for capital is crucial to enable this potentially dynamic sector to grow and provide the needed jobs.
Joy Business Knowledge, empowering.
Interesting stuff, Moavi. And you know, I mentioned that in the UK, 50% of SMEs, the 50% of the SMEs who run the economy. Here in Ghana, we've got 90% of our businesses registered as small businesses. So it tells you what difference we can make if we actually help these businesses grow.
So let me go to Asabi and ask what's the problems, what are the challenges with the small businesses that we have in Ghana?
I think that primarily the biggest concern, if a startup or an SME is watching you now, the first response would be, as they sit in their shops, money. You know,
access to credit, always a problem.
Always. But we've discovered in our work that education is more important, being business savvy, how to run their books. So the business education is probably more important than the money. But those are challenges that they face. How do I ensure that the business is sustainable? I have a shop in Makola. How do I ensure that when I'm dead and gone, the shop doesn't close automatically, you know? So that's, business longevity is a problem, because once there's a cycle and the cycles are short, then the business diminishes, and at every point in time there's a gap. So those are some of the challenges that they face. The ideas for business and how to run what I call an educated business, informal or not.
I know that there are some people who give funds. There are places where you can go and get funds for a business that you're starting. But I listened to a conversation on the BBC just this morning about how people don't even understand the terms and the conditions to access some of these funds. Do we have the same challenges in Ghana?
Absolutely. And you find that when microfinance companies open, SMEs and startups queue to go and borrow. It's one of the critical mistakes that both the businesses do and the SMEs that go to borrow also make. It's the same problem. People not understanding the terms and conditions, the interest rates, the impact it has on their books, the returns they get vis-a-vis the payment rates, the installments they have to pay every month for loans that they take. So they'll say, I need money. But when they get money, what they do with it, when they get money, the terms and conditions for payment, when they get money, the returns they get upon investing the money in their business, that education is seriously lacking, and that's a big challenge.
And even when you talk about access to finance, all they're thinking about is the banks, because that's the only option they think they have in searching for monies to run their businesses. We are also in the age where we are looking at making our businesses globally competitive, so issues of packaging, quality of products, and all of that. We've got Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook doing great. He also started as a startup, and he's doing great things. We have the Tony Elumelus of Nigeria, Dangote, and well, in Ghana, I don't know how many big names we have, so that's quite a challenge. I spoke to a number of startups about their challenges, and here's what they told me.
Okay.
Has been a very challenging one. First of all, as you start, you need to keep standards for your product. You need to be known for a particular standard. When someone takes your drink, they know the difference. They can tell the difference. People can testify, recommend to others. So it's not been a smooth one with startup capital and all that. But
first thing, the major thing I would say is finding a team who buy into the vision, who see the bigger picture of what you're trying to do. That's the major challenge I've faced. The biggest challenge, finding a team who see the picture, the big picture. That is one major hurdle that even as you go, you experience more, you learn how to create better teams, but then that challenge still exists. Also, an obvious challenge is, the issue of funds. Okay, so how do you get funds to invest into your business, to grow your business, to invest into projects? Because some people might want you to pre-finance some project up to a certain point, and you need funds for marketing and other things. So that was also another big challenge. Another major thing is, policies. Now, when I say policies, I mean governmental policies, because in Ghana, the policies which government has do not really foster or help young entrepreneurs to start their businesses and also to grow their businesses. So that is one example of that. I mean, you go to register a business at the RGD, Registered General Department, and it could take forever. I mean, when we started, we intended to register as an enterprise. That's what they call it, an enterprise. And even that took several months before we got our certificate. So that was another big challenge.
Okay, so aside the challenges he mentions there, they also have to grapple with the challenges big businesses face. For instance, cost of doing business, high utility tariffs, high taxes and all of that. And so it's really a tough one for SMEs and startups.
So, Asabia, how do you get over these challenges?
Maybe some challenges are more surmountable than others. One of the things that one of the startups mentioned was policy, and I remember that in conversations with Daryl, we've talked about policy a lot.
Is anybody hearing?
We hope so. We hope so. If the macroeconomic environment is not viable for business, that you can do your best, but it might not be enough. Nonetheless, it's usually not about the external factors, but the internal factor. What do you know? What do you need to know? And what do you need for your business to thrive? And are you looking in the right place for that information, for that growth? We've talked about how funding is a problem. People should get access to information about unorthodox funding, measures. We often say there's this term in finance that if you want to start a business, the first people you have to borrow from are fools, family and friends. And the term fools is used loosely because those are the people that you don't know from anywhere, and they have that confidence in your business because you're able to pitch it to them and they invest in you. How many people know this? So it's important to get educated on what makes a business thrive, what makes a business sustainable. Also, cutting costs would be a huge one, but all of that feeds into the big conversation about being educated about the business.
Okay, education is very high on your agenda, I see.
Very.
I think, and it's important because even when you have the money and you're not educated about how to use the money, you can't manage the money.
So let's be clear, when you say education, do I go back to the classroom and start learning?
Not at all. I was just going to interject there and say that we've realized that there are basic things that you expect people who have businesses to know. Basic things like, what's my cost per month? How much profit am I making? How much gross profit am I making? How much net profit am I making? People don't know that. There are basic things like, what's the government's policy on agriculture? So if I want to go into agric, this is why I am going into it, and the government can help me with this, this and that based on A, B, and C policy. They don't have that. And so some information you need, and there are these hubs where you go for knowledge, especially for young people who have come out of school and want to go off and be on their own. I also realize that a lot of finance houses now have clinics, SME clinics and things like that. Those are important for any SME or small business to attend.
Sure.
When you watch TV, don't just watch TV. Watch for the education programs like these. We've realized that there are little things that people can do that can significantly change the fortunes of their business, but they don't know.
So they are not doing it.
So they are not doing.
But Daryl, it looks like government is finally paying a bit of attention to the SMEs.
Sure, and you were asking if anybody was listening, at least they may have heard.
We had our first SME fair.
Yeah, and that was last month, first SME finance and fair, which was supposed to bridge the financial intermediation gap, big deal, between the finance institution, non-bank institutions, and then the SMEs, and it went pretty well. And well, at least it's a starting point. So hopefully, as time goes on, greater attention, greater focus. Like I said, I mean, we are beginning to realize that our international commodities, the cocoa, the gold, the oil, they're not doing us any good because of the price volatility on the international market. So it's high time we turn to our small businesses and help them grow. And well, I sought the views of an expert on this, that is the head of Total Quality at the University of Professional Studies, that is Professor Goski Alabi. Let's take a look at what she said.
Which suggests that about 70% of these SMEs we are talking about collapse by the time they are 5 years old. And so what are some of the reasons why it happens that way? Interacting with some of the SMEs, both organized SMEs and unorganized SMEs, you realize that quite a number of things. And oftentimes what we find as limitations, maybe some form of constraints, like access to finance. But the critical thing is people really do not have the financial management acumen. So whenever they are even helped with loans, they are not able to pay back. It's a fact. So why do we have some of these things happening? It's because there's too much waste in our system, waste in our management system. It's also because we do not focus on quality, and it's because of mediocrity, which is a culture. And if we need to change this mediocre culture, we need to change our perspective of quality and the way we do things. For example, as a growing up child, I saw my father wore batakari. I saw my brothers and my friends, they wear beautiful African shirts and prints like you do. But till today, you buy something like batakari and sometimes you find it's some kotoku as the lining. You find that some of them are not, including the traditional shirts, they are not properly finished. They are not properly packaged. They are not properly labeled. You don't even have sizes. You cannot buy a good batakari or a traditional local shirt by a size. They are often hanged on trees. Dust go in, so forth and so on. So you realize that our whole approach to delivering quality would have to be interrogated again, because we operate not in a traditional or local market, but on a global market, when the globe is opened not only by imports, but also by the internet business. And therefore, we need to wake up. We also need to look at how we leverage technology to enhance what we do and to reduce cost. And finally, we need to look at talent management, how we manage talent and the work ethic or the work culture in this country.
All right, so let's turn attention, Daryl. Let me go to Asabi and ask, are we overly reliant, the SMEs, on governments? Has government got all the answers?
I think that SMEs feel orphaned, and they feel that in an environment where, and Daryl keeps talking about figures, so I don't want to go back to analytics, but in an environment where the future depends on business and on SMEs and startups, government is seen to be relying solely on the traditional methods of revenue mobilization that aren't making profit. Like he said, a vast majority, 90% of the businesses registered in Ghana belong to SMEs and our enterprises. However, how many of them pay tax? How many of them make enough to even pay tax? That's the question. So you want to have policy that takes this mass block into consideration, and that says this is a policy tailored for you. Not that this is a policy for business, so go and scrape a little off, you know, or get a bit of the crumbs that fall off. But a well-informed policy and a comprehensive one that takes the needs of business into consideration.
All right. Now back to the van.
Yes,
what's new about the van now that it's on television?
Okay, so the van is going across all platforms. That's on radio, TV, and online as well. We are going to tell you, I mean, people have been listening to the van on radio now. You can't see it on TV, and that's so refreshing. And the great thing is that we've got Busy on board, internet service provider Busy. They're sponsoring the van across all platforms, and that's a big deal, and that's giving us a further mileage, if you like, because we can do what we want to do with the van. And I've been engaging the managing director of Busy Province Satellite about why Busy decided to show interest in the Joy Business Van.
Sure.
As you know, Busy Internet has been in the past associated with startups. We also started off very small, and we have been on the market for many years. We have been constantly innovating. We have been constantly reinventing ourselves, rediscovering ourselves. And in the process, we feel that if we are associated with startups, we could potentially share our learnings. We could potentially share what we have understood, how to operate, how to be ahead of the curve, and try to ensure that we pass on this benefit to our customers and to potential startups, which could be big names down the line. So that's the reason we thought we should be on this platform.
Okay. So Busy is not just going on the road with us. You are also hoping to engage some of these SMEs and startups. What are some of the products that you have that are tailored towards these startups, these SMEs?
A startup starts from an idea, and that idea is about trying to fill a certain need, a certain gap in a given environment, in a given ecosystem. And to get your ideas to your customers, to test your ideas, to try to get them to the market, you need some level of connectivity where you could exchange your thoughts. You could get people to look at what you have and build your product or build your business as you grow. And we, as Busy Internet, with our latest 4G, are in a position to meet that requirement by which we give reliable connectivity, by which you could be potentially talking to your potential investors, you could be talking to your potential clients, you could be talking to your developers, for example, and you would be communicating seamlessly. And we want to be in that space where we are able to help startups get to that next level of their business.
It's interesting that you mentioned the 4G service, because it's been one of your key selling points this year. Tell me more about that service and how important it is for small businesses especially.
You see, 4G is, as you know, is the latest technology that has been introduced in Ghana, and we have brought a phenomenal choice to our customers. And it's about delivering higher capacity in the given spectrum or in the given frequency what you have. Now, 4G ensures you get better connectivity, you get better speeds, and you are able to operate in a much efficient and innovative way. I mean, that's the way we look at it. Now, for startups, you know, these companies are new on the horizon. They are on shoestring budgets. They have limited resources. So the products what we are bringing to these companies is about that. We are bringing in reliability, we are bringing in good quality at a very reasonable price.
So that's the MD of Busy, and Busy is on board the Joy Business Fan on radio, on television, and online. Asabia, let me finally ask you, how do you sustain your business, your small business, in these times? The power crisis, we don't know if it's back or if it's gone. We understand going to the banks is a no around this time. How do you live through these times?
Like they say, these are the best of times and the worst of times. And one thing businesses should know is that if you're able to survive this period, then you can survive a lot of other things, because the economy is not as resilient as it should be. But this is where innovation and creativity is key, and this is where cost cutting is key. You need to think outside the box about new supply lines, new ways of advertising that you hadn't thought of. You find a lot of people using social media these days. They use WhatsApp for their friends, which in terms of advertisement, it costs very little, but in the end, it helps them make more. You want to think also about, if you produce, you want to think about where you can move out of town or slightly on the outskirts of town, so that you get slightly cheaper labor than you would in town. But all of that is part of the innovation and creativity conversation, where you have to sit down, think outside the box, and think, these are the gaps. How do I take advantage of the gaps in the market and make sure that my business is successful, even though a lot of others are folding up around now.
Can anybody come to you for support?
Definitely.
Okay, so how do they get in touch?
We're online. You can email us at info@windrowgh.com or myself, Asabia, at windrowgh.com.
Okay.
We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, on LinkedIn, myself, Asabia Gwenu. So you can find us.
Okay.
And if you find Joy Business, you can find us.
Right, sure.
Because you'll be seeing a lot of hair on the Joy Business
On the
but
Joy
she's more
Business
like
Fund.
a startup coach.
Fantastic. So, Daryl, we've got the Joy Business Fund today.
Today
What
on
should we
Business
expect?
Live at 5 o'clock, today we are telling the story of a young pharmacist who decided to abandon it all and then pursue his dream. He loves shoes, so he decided to be a shoemaker.
Wow.
Take a look.
30-year-old Benjamin Esiam Amanfo is CEO of this startup.
I started making shoes 2 years ago after I met my boss, Samuel Anderson. He made good shoes for me to buy, and then I told him I wanted to work with him, and then he agreed to teach me, and then we started working together.
It was a tough decision to make.
Charlie decided to leave the pharmacy work and then do this one because I had the love for this one.
All right, that's a pharmacy assistant. He has his own thing happening now. How many of us graduates would decide to be shoemakers? That's on the Joy Business Fund later on at 5
That's
p.m.
earning
right
him
here.
money, and that's good.
Yeah. The radio version will be on Joy FM at 1, correct?
Yes, right after the Joy Business Report at 1 o'clock.
All right. Asabia, thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Daryl, I'll see you around.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Stay with us. We'll come back with our AM chat today. A lot of interesting comments we're getting. Stay with us.
AM Business was brought